Listen closely, and let me tell you a tale that unfolded in the heart of a New England winter. A story that whispers of courage found in the smallest of creatures and a love that defied the bitterest cold. Imagine a night so sharp with frost that the stars themselves seemed to shiver in the vast, indifferent sky. In the quiet, snow-blanketed town of Oak Haven, Massachusetts, amidst this biting chill, a tiny, almost imperceptible heartbeat flickered within a discarded cardboard box. This is the story of that fragile life, abandoned to the merciless elements, and of Bella, an extraordinary calico cat, the unlikely guardian angel who, against all odds, orchestrated a miracle. Her bravery and profound compassion would soon become the quiet legend of Oak Haven, a testament to the unexpected heroes that walk among us, sometimes on four paws. Bella was far from your average house cat. She was a queen of the in-between spaces, a striking calico with a coat like a painter's palette, bold splashes of ginger, deep black, and pristine white. Her eyes, like polished emeralds, surveyed her kingdom, which encompassed the entirety of Willow Creek Lane and its surrounding gardens and alleyways. She wasn't a stray in the mournful sense of the word. Several families on the lane left out food for her, a gesture of communal affection for their enigmatic feline resident. Old Mr. Gable, who lived at the corner, had even constructed a small, insulated shelter on his porch, lined with a faded blue flannel blanket, a cozy haven Bella occasionally graced with her presence. But Bella, at her core, was a spirit of fierce independence. She came and went as she pleased, a silent, graceful empress conducting her daily affairs with an air of quiet dignity. Her days were a rich tapestry woven from sun-drenched naps on the warm hoods of parked cars, stealthy hunts for field mice in the overgrown lot behind the town's beloved bakery, and the occasional, regal acceptance of a scratch behind the ears from a particularly favored human. This particular January night, however, offered none of the gentle comforts Bella usually sought. A fierce blizzard had stormed through Oak Haven a few days prior, a true nor'easter that had buried the town under towering snowdrifts and left an atmosphere so frigid it felt like breathing in tiny shards of glass. The temperature had plummeted well below freezing, settling into the dangerous single digits, and a relentless, biting wind howled through the bare, skeletal branches of the ancient maple trees lining Willow Creek Lane. This wind was a mournful singer, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke from distant chimneys and the sharp, clean, unforgiving aroma of deep, unyielding ice. Most sensible creatures, human and animal alike, were huddled indoors, seeking refuge from the night's brutal assault. But Bella, ever the vigilant sovereign, was on one of her nocturnal patrols. Her thick, tricolored fur provided a respectable barrier against the cold, but even she felt the sharp sting in her paws as she navigated the treacherous, icy sidewalks, each step a careful, considered movement. Her routine was usually predictable: a thorough circuit around the block, a quick, hopeful check of the bins behind the corner perk, the local coffee shop, for any overlooked scraps of forgotten pastry, and then, perhaps, if the wind became too unbearable, a strategic retreat to the sheltered porch of Mr. Gable's house. Tonight, though, something was different, an anomaly in the crisp, frigid air. As she padded silently, a shadow among shadows, past the darkened windows of the Miller house, her ears, those incredibly sensitive instruments, swiveled sharply, catching a sound that simply didn't belong. It was faint, almost entirely swallowed by the wind's mournful symphony, but it was unmistakably there, a high-pitched, intermittent whimper, thin and fragile. Curiosity, a trait as deeply ingrained in Bella's nature as her finely honed hunting instinct, momentarily overcame her pressing desire for warmth and shelter. She paused, her lithe body low to the frozen ground, her whiskers twitching as she tested the air. The scent was a confusing mélange: damp cardboard, a faint, vaguely human odor, and an underlying, pervasive note of distress that resonated deep within her, stirring something ancient and protective. She moved with cautious, deliberate steps towards the source, a shadowy, narrow alleyway squeezed between the miller's detached garage and a tall, wooden privacy fence. There, half hidden by a recent snowdrift, looking like just another piece of forgotten refuse, was a medium-sized cardboard box. It could have been anything, packaging from an online order, discarded clutter, but the faint, desperate sounds emanated from within its flimsy walls. Bella approached with the fluid grace of a seasoned predator, her emerald eyes scanning the dimly lit space for any sign of potential danger. The whimpering was clear now, no longer a mere whisper, but a fragile, desperate plea. It wasn't the sound of any trapped animal she recognized, not a squirrel caught unawares, nor a raccoon in a tight spot. This was different, more delicate, more vulnerable, and it tugged at something primal, something deeply maternal within her. She nudged the cold, stiff box with her nose. It was frigid to the touch, radiating the night's chill. She pushed again, with more determination this time, and one of the loosely closed flaps gave way slightly, revealing a sliver of darkness within. Peering into the dim, cramped interior, Bella's emerald eyes widened, reflecting the faint, ambient light from a distant street lamp. Nestled amongst a few thin, soiled rags, looking utterly out of place in this harsh, makeshift cradle, was a tiny human infant. Its face was a blotchy, alarming mosaic of angry red and deathly pale blue. Its miniature fists clenched tight, and its cries were weak, frail exhalations, a mere whisper against the vast, uncaring silence of the frozen night. The baby was so small, so completely and utterly helpless, a fragile spark of life on the verge of being extinguished. For a long moment, Bella simply stared, her feline mind perhaps struggling to process the impossible, heartbreaking scene before her. Cats are often, and unfairly, perceived as aloof, self-serving creatures, driven solely by their own needs. But those who truly know them, who have shared their lives with these enigmatic companions, understand their profound capacity for deep affection, their surprising empathy, and their fierce loyalty. Whatever complex thoughts or ancient instincts coursed through Bella's intelligent mind in that critical moment, her subsequent actions were driven by an undeniable, overwhelming urge to protect this vulnerable being. The cold inside the box was palpable, a chilling dampness that promised only a grim end. Without a flicker of hesitation, Bella squeezed her lithe, supple body through the narrow opening she had created. She carefully maneuvered around the motionless infant, her movements surprisingly gentle, almost reverent for a creature accustomed to the swift pounce of a hunt. Then, she curled herself meticulously around the tiny, shivering form, tucking her paws neatly beneath her chest and pressing her warm, furry body firmly against the baby's dangerously chilled skin. The infant, perhaps sensing the sudden, unexpected infusion of warmth, quieted slightly, its weak whimpers softening into shallow, shuddering breaths. Bella began to purr, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through her own body and into the fragile infant nestled against her, a potent sound of comfort and reassurance in the desolate, unforgiving cold. But warmth alone, Bella seemed to understand with an instinct older than time itself, wouldn't be enough. This small, helpless creature needed more. It needed intervention. It needed humans. Positioning herself so she continued to provide a vital shield of warmth, Bella lifted her head and let out a meow. This was not her usual polite, almost conversational request for food or attention. This was a sound transformed, a loud, insistent, almost desperate yowl, a vocal alarm designed to pierce the thick blanket of the wind and cut through the profound silence of the sleeping street. She yowled again, and then again, her calls echoing sharply in the narrow, confined space of the alleyway, each cry a desperate plea flung into the indifferent, star-strewn darkness. She alternated between these urgent, piercing cries and tenderly nuzzling the baby, licking its cold, pale cheek with her rough maternal tongue, as if trying to coax a stronger, more resilient sign of life from the tiny, still form. Inside her cozy, warm home at the far end of Willow Creek Lane, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, A kind-hearted widow in her late 70s with a fondness for stray cats and strong tea was having unusual trouble sleeping. The wind, a relentless tormentor, rattled her old window panes, and her thoughts kept drifting to the sheer harshness of the night, a silent prayer on her lips for any creature caught out in such brutal conditions. She had just drifted into a light, uneasy doze when a sound, sharp and distinct, pierced her consciousness. At first, she dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on her old ears, perhaps a branch scraping against the siding. But then it came again, an unmistakable, distressed meow. "Bella," she murmured into the quiet darkness of her bedroom, pulling her thick, quilted dressing gown tighter around her frail shoulders. Mrs. Vance was one of Bella's most devoted benefactors on the lane. She knew all of the calico's varied vocalizations, from the soft, welcoming chirp of greeting when Bella appeared on her doorstep, to the more demanding, insistent cry for her morning saucer of milk. This sound, however, was entirely different. It was filled with an uncharacteristic, jarring urgency, a note that bordered on sheer panic. Concern, sharp and immediate, furrowed her wrinkled brow. She carefully got out of her warm bed, her slippered feet shuffling softly across the cold wooden floor. She peered out her front window, her breath misting the cold glass. But Willow Creek Lane lay dark and empty, the deep snowdrifts reflecting the cold, distant starlight in an eerie, silent glow. The meowing continued, sharper now, more insistent, almost frantic. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the Miller's property, a few houses down. "Oh, that silly cat," Mrs. Vance sighed, though a tight knot of unease was forming in her stomach, a premonition she couldn't quite shake. "What kind of trouble have you gotten yourself into now, my dear?" Bundling up as best she could in her warmest winter coat, a knitted woolen hat pulled down over her ears and thick, sheepskin-lined mittens, Mrs. Vance grabbed a powerful, heavy-duty flashlight from the kitchen drawer, its beam a reassuring weight in her hand. Taking a deep breath, she opened her back door and stepped out into the frigid, biting night. The cold hit her with an almost physical force, stealing her breath for a moment and making her gasp. She pulled her scarf tighter around her face, leaving only her eyes exposed, and began to crunch her way slowly and carefully through the deep, undisturbed snow, her flashlight beam cutting a bright path ahead, following the sound of Bella's increasingly frantic and desperate cries. As she neared the Miller's property, the meows grew louder, more distinct, guiding her like an invisible beacon in the oppressive darkness. "Bella? Kitty, are you all right?" she called out, her voice thin and reedy against the persistent howl of the wind. Bella heard her. A new note, a flicker of desperate hope, entered her escalating meows. She yowled even louder, a clear, directional call that seemed to say, "Here, over here, hurry." Mrs. Vance rounded the corner of the Miller's detached garage, her flashlight beam sweeping across the snow-covered ground. It landed on the significant snowdrift piled against the privacy fence, and then on the half-hidden cardboard box. And there, perched precariously on the edge of that very box, illuminated like a tiny, furry sentinel caught in a spotlight, was Bella, her emerald eyes glowing with an intense, almost otherworldly light in the flashlight beam. She was meowing fit to burst, her gaze darting anxiously from Mrs. Vance to the box and back again, her entire body quivering with agitation. "Bella, what is it? What on earth have you found, dear?" Mrs. Vance approached cautiously, her heart beginning to pound with a sudden, inexplicable dread. Bella jumped down from the box and rubbed urgently against her legs, still meowing insistently, then immediately darted back to the box, looking expectantly, almost imploringly, at the old woman. Mrs. Vance leaned down, her knees creaking in loud protest against the cold and the sudden movement. She aimed the bright beam of the flashlight directly into the opening of the box. Her breath hitched violently in her throat. For a horrifying, surreal second, her mind refused to comprehend what her eyes were seeing. Then, the devastating reality crashed down on her with the force of a physical blow. A baby, a tiny, live human baby, abandoned in a flimsy cardboard box in the freezing, merciless cold of a January night. "Oh, dear Lord in heaven!" she gasped, her mittened hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Her mind reeled, struggling to accept the horrific tableau. This couldn't be happening. Not in quiet, peaceful Oakhaven. Not anywhere. The baby, disturbed by the light or the sudden movement, let out a weak, pitiful cry, a sound that tore at Mrs. Vance's heart. Its skin looked terribly pale and waxy, almost translucent in the harsh, unforgiving glare of the flashlight. Bella, as if understanding the profound gravity of the moment and the need for immediate action, had already jumped back into the box and was once again curled protectively, steadfastly, around the infant, her deep purr a desperate, thrumming vibration of warmth and life in the face of encroaching death. Mrs. Vance's long-dormant training as a registered nurse from a lifetime ago kicked in with surprising swiftness. She knew, with chilling certainty, that every single second counted. She fumbled for her cell phone in her coat pocket with numb, clumsy fingers, her eyes never leaving the tiny, exquisitely vulnerable form in the box. Her call to 911 was breathless, punctuated by shivers, but clear and concise. "There's an abandoned baby, Willow Creek Lane, by the Miller's garage in a cardboard box. It's alive, but barely. Please, you must hurry. Please hurry." While she waited for the emergency services, a period that stretched into an agonizing, felt eternity, Mrs. Vance didn't dare attempt to move the baby herself, fearing she might inadvertently do more harm than good in her agitated state and without proper equipment. Instead, she spoke in low, soothing tones, her voice trembling but gentle, directing her words to both the infant and to the brave calico cat. "Help is coming, little one. You're going to be all right. You hear me? You're going to be just fine. And you, Bella," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "you brave, wonderful, incredible girl. You saved this baby. You truly, truly saved it." Bella merely looked up at her from her vigil, blinked her luminous green eyes slowly, then pressed herself even closer to the infant, a small, furry, life-sustaining furnace against the overwhelming, encroaching cold. The wail of sirens, faint at first, then rapidly growing louder, sliced through the frozen night, a sound of urgent, approaching hope. Within what felt like mere moments, an ambulance and a police cruiser, their lights flashing a kaleidoscope of red and blue against the white snow, skidded to a halt at the end of the narrow alleyway. Paramedics, their faces grim and intensely focused, rushed forward with a gurney and a cascade of medical equipment. Officer Russo, a young but respected policeman known in Oakhaven for his calm and compassionate demeanor, was with them, his expression serious. The scene that greeted them was undeniably surreal, something out of a strange, poignant dream. An elderly woman, bundled in nightclothes and a heavy coat, a flashlight trembling in her mittened hand, and a small calico cat steadfastly, defiantly, guarding a near-frozen infant in a flimsy, inadequate cardboard box against the backdrop of a brutal winter night. The paramedics worked with swift, practiced, life-saving efficiency. One gently, but firmly, lifted a protesting Bella out of the box. The cat let out a short, sharp hiss and a disgruntled flick of her tail before she seemed to understand the necessity of the action, her gaze fixed on the infant. The other paramedic carefully, tenderly scooped up the baby, immediately wrapping it in a specialized thermal blanket. "It's a girl," she announced, her voice tight with professional concern and a hint of underlying emotion. "Critically hypothermic, but she's breathing. We need to go. Now." As they rushed the baby to the waiting, warmed ambulance, its engine already running, Officer Russo stayed behind with a visibly shaken Mrs. Vance. "Can you tell me what happened, Eleanor?" he asked gently, using her first name in a gesture of kindness and familiarity. Through chattering teeth, a combination of the penetrating cold and the lingering shock, Mrs. Vance recounted Bella's persistent, unusual meows, her own reluctant investigation, and the horrifying, unbelievable discovery. If it hadn't been for Bella, She trailed off, her voice thick with unshed tears and profound gratitude. That poor, precious child wouldn't have stood a chance. That cat, officer, she's a true hero. A genuine hero. Bella, meanwhile, having been momentarily displaced from her crucial post, watched the flashing lights of the ambulance recede rapidly down Willow Creek Lane, carrying its precious cargo towards warmth and medical care. She then rubbed against Mrs. Vance's legs once more, a silent, comforting acknowledgement, a shared understanding of the night's extraordinary events, before melting back into the deep shadows of the alleyway, her duty faithfully and courageously done. The night was still brutally, dangerously cold, but something profound, something miraculous had shifted in the quiet, snowbound heart of Oak Haven. At Oak Haven Community Hospital, a small but well-equipped facility known for its dedicated staff, the emergency room team, led by the calm and competent Dr. Peterson, sprang into immediate, coordinated action. The baby girl, whom the nurses had temporarily and affectionately nicknamed Angel, was in critical condition. Her core body temperature was dangerously, life-threateningly low, her breathing shallow and erratic, and her tiny, fragile body bore the telltale signs of prolonged, severe exposure to the elements. Dr. Peterson and her team worked tirelessly, employing warming blankets, carefully administered intravenous fluids, and constant, vigilant monitoring. Every beep and whir of the medical machines, every subtle fluctuation in the baby's vital signs, was scrutinized with intense focus. For long, anxious hours, Angel's life hung precariously in the balance, a tiny flame flickering in a harsh wind. Mrs. Vance, having been kindly escorted to the hospital by Officer Russo to give a formal statement, and more importantly, to warm up and recover from her ordeal, sat in the sterile quiet of the waiting room, clutching a cup of steaming hot tea provided by a thoughtful nurse, praying with a fervor and intensity she hadn't felt in many years. Officer Russo checked in periodically, his usual professional stoicism tinged with a palpable, shared concern for the tiny patient. Slowly, painstakingly, miraculously, Angel began to respond to the intensive treatment. A faint, delicate touch of pink, the first sign of returning life, began to suffuse her previously pale cheeks. Her breathing deepened, becoming more regular, more stable. Her tiny fingers, once stiff and tinged with an alarming blue, began to twitch with the return of circulation and sensation. By the first pale rays of dawn, as the early morning sunlight illuminated the frosted hospital windows, painting the room in soft, hopeful hues, Dr. Peterson was able to deliver a cautiously optimistic prognosis to a deeply relieved Mrs. Vance and Officer Russo. "She's a fighter, this little one," she said, a tired but genuine smile gracing her lips. "Her core temperature is rising steadily, and her vitals are stabilizing. The next 24 hours are still critical. Make no mistake, but she has a very good chance." That cat truly saved her life. The warmth from its body, however small, likely prevented severe, irreversible frostbite and, crucially, bought us the precious time we needed. News of the miraculous rescue, of the tiny baby found in the snow and the brave calico cat who had stayed by her side, spread through the tight-knit community of Oak Haven like wildfire fanned by a winter wind. By mid-morning, the Ballad of Bella and the Baby, as young Timmy from the bakery, who often left Bella scraps, had dramatically dubbed it, was the sole, astonished topic of conversation in the town's cozy cafes, the well-stocked aisles of the general store, and the busy counters of the post office. The story seemed almost mythical, like a fable passed down through generations. A common neighborhood cat, guided by an almost human-like compassion and intelligence, standing guard over an abandoned human child in the dead of a brutal winter, her actions defying all expectation. Bella, blissfully unaware of her newfound and rapidly growing fame, was discovered later that morning curled up in a tight, exhausted ball in the faded blue flannel blanket in the shelter on Mr. Gable's porch, looking thoroughly depleted but otherwise unharmed by her nocturnal ordeal. Mr. Gable, a man of few words but deep affections, Having heard the astonishing news from a still agitated Mrs. Vance, who had called him first thing, greeted Bella not just with her usual saucer of fresh milk, but with a generous, heaping portion of expensive, oil-packed canned tuna, the highest praise in his culinary arsenal for deserving felines. The local newspaper, the Oakhaven Chronicle, cleared its front page for the story, running it under the bold headline, "Feline Hero Saves Abandoned Infant from Frigid Death. Calico Cat Named Bella Hailed as Savior." The article, written with genuine admiration, detailed Bella's extraordinary bravery, her quick thinking, and Mrs. Vance's timely and compassionate intervention. National news outlets, always hungry for a heartwarming story, especially one with such an unusual hero, picked up the story, and soon, Bella of Oakhaven was a minor celebrity, her calico image gracing websites and television screens across the country. Donations poured into Oakhaven Community Hospital for Angel's ongoing care, and heartfelt offers of adoption for the little girl came from families near and far, all touched by her incredible story of survival. The Oakhaven Police Department, led by their diligent Chief Brody, launched a thorough and painstaking investigation into the circumstances of the baby's abandonment. They appealed to the public for any information. Their search focused on finding the person or persons responsible for such a cruel and desperate act. The community, while celebrating Bella's quiet heroism and Angel's remarkable resilience, felt a collective pang of sorrow and a simmering anger that any child could be left in such obviously perilous and heartbreaking circumstances. In the days and weeks that followed, Angel, now officially and fittingly named Grace by the hospital staff until her long-term future could be determined, grew steadily stronger, a tiny beacon of hope. She was a beautiful baby, with a surprising tuft of dark, silky hair and eyes that, when they opened to observe the world around her, seemed to hold a deep, old, knowing wisdom. Social services, in the form of a kind but no-nonsense case worker named Ms. Albright, began the difficult but crucial process of finding her a safe, loving, and permanent home. Bella, meanwhile, became the undisputed, though still aloof, Queen of Willow Creek Lane and, indeed, all of Oakhaven. Her usual food offerings were significantly upgraded by grateful neighbors. New, even plusher, and more elaborate shelters appeared on several porches, testaments to her elevated status. Children would point her out with a mixture of awe and affection, whispering excitedly to their parents, "Look, Mom, that's Bella, the hero cat, the one who saved the baby." She accepted these accolades and the increased attention with her typical feline stoicism, though she seemed to particularly enjoy the extra chin scratches and the premium, wild-caught salmon treats that now frequently and mysteriously appeared on Mrs. Vance's doorstep, clearly intended for her. She still maintained her cherished independence, her comings and goings dictated by her own whims. But perhaps she walked with a slightly prouder, more regal gait, her emerald eyes gleaming with an ancient, knowing light, as if she carried a secret understanding of the world's hidden kindnesses. Mrs. Vance, in many ways, became Bella's unofficial spokesperson and biographer, regaling anyone who would listen, and many who wouldn't, with a detailed, heartfelt tale of that fateful, frozen night. She always emphasized Bella's remarkable intelligence, her unwavering determination, and her profound empathy. "Animals know, you see," she'd say, her voice filled with unwavering conviction, her eyes bright. "They know kindness, and they understand distress, sometimes better than we humans do." Bella knew that baby needed her. She just knew. The search for Grace's biological parents continued, a somber, unresolved undercurrent to the town's collective relief and enduring pride in their feline heroine. But whatever the tragic circumstances of her birth and subsequent abandonment, one thing was undeniably, luminously certain. Her fragile life had been touched and ultimately saved by an extraordinary, unforgettable act of interspecies compassion. A small, furry creature, driven by instincts that transcended easy understanding, had faced down the unrelenting harshness of a brutal New England winter night and, against all conceivable odds, had saved a precious human life. Weeks turned into months. Grace thrived, a testament to her own resilience and the excellent care she received. She was eventually placed with a loving, devoted foster family in a neighboring town, a kind couple who had yearned for a child for many years. They knew her incredible story, every detail of it, and they cherished her all the more for the sheer miracle of her survival. They even sent a beautifully written thank you card and a large, extravagant gift basket filled with gourmet cat treats to Oakhaven, addressed simply and perfectly to Bella, Hero Cat, care of Mrs. Eleanor Vance, Willow Creek Lane. Bella continued her reign on Willow Creek Lane, a living legend in their midst. The harsh, unforgiving winter eventually, grudgingly, gave way to a tentative, hopeful spring, then blossomed into a vibrant, sun-drenched summer. The deep snows melted, the flowers bloomed in a riot of color, and life in Oakhaven returned to its familiar, comforting rhythms. But no one who lived there, no one who had heard the story, would ever forget the winter when a little calico cat named Bella became a hero. Her story served as a powerful, enduring reminder that heroism can, and often does, come in the most unexpected and unassuming forms, and that compassion, in its purest, most unselfish state, knows no species, no boundaries. It was a quiet, profound testament to the courage of a small creature who, on one frozen, desperate night, became a beacon of warmth and hope in a cold, indifferent world, forever weaving her tiny paw prints into the grateful heart of a small New England town. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind whistled through the maple trees just right, residents of Willow Creek Lane would swear they could still hear a faint, proud, and distinctly contented meow carried on the gentle breeze. A soft, sweet reminder of the night Bella, the hero cat of Oakhaven, performed a miracle.